What is up, everybody? Listen to this song in the background. Oh, well, wow. Oh. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Yep. This is what we're doing. You know what? This is what we're talking about right here. This is what we're talking about. So, as always, what is up, everybody out there? You know who this is. This is Jason Christ, Jason the Baptist, he who is holy, what? The one and motherfucking only Jason Christ. Or, just Jason from Hustle Hard, however you want to put it, you know what I mean? But here's what I'm here to say today. It's Friday. It's finally here. Normally, I hope y'all like the old punks never die. We just stand in the back hoodie. My girl got it for me like maybe 2 years ago. It's true. I realized that as I quit being in the pit and just started standing in the back. But yeah, pretty cool ass hoodie. So today, normally on Friday, I like to do something fun. Kind of go into my past, a little bit of like get to know Jason, right? And I wanted to do that. I truly wanted to do that today, but I felt compelled. Now, I'm not really one to usually do current events. I've told you before, and I do truly believe this and mean this, that truly intelligent people, we talk about ideas, concepts, and theories, and new possibilities. All right. The dumb people out there, they talk about other people, but the people in the middle, they talk about current events. I try to stick to the ideas more, but today I decided that I'm being forced. I am forced to talk about current events, and you know what I'm going to talk about, right? What current event is going on out there? That is probably the most important thing that's happened in the since the fall of the Iron Curtain. You got it. Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. Now, I'm gonna be real. I'm an American, 100%. I'm 44 years old. I grew up in the era that was anti-Russia, 100%. I grew up with Rambo. I grew up with Chuck Norris. And I grew up with Arnold. And of course, I grew up with Red Dawn. Wolverines! So as a kid, I'll be real, I always figured that one day I would be fighting the Russians. That's true. Me and one of my best friends growing up when we were kids, Travis, that was like our thought that we were going to be fighting the Russians, Red Dawn style, hiding in and out of the fields and sneaking into town and taking out Ruskies. That was what we thought we'd be doing. And now it may be happening. Who knows, right? But here's the thing. I've grown up, I've gotten older. And with that came the reality that I started meeting a lot of Russian people. Not all of them were bad. Not all of them were good, just like anybody else out there, Usually, it's always the governments that are fucked up. For instance, our government. I love my country. I've told you this before. And I love each and every one of my brothers and sisters, my American brothers and sisters. And that's not just America. I consider America, we're North America. No, I don't like those Canadians unless they're on Letterkenny, but that's something different. Just kidding. But either way. So what I'm getting at here is I'm biased as fuck against Russia from the get. But then again, I don't know much about or give a fuck about the Ukraine in a lot of ways from the get. But what I do care about is oppressed people. Okay? When people are being oppressed by essentially by a big bully or somebody that has the ability to assert their power over them, then I take notice. And and then I look at why. Why on the earth would Vladimir Putin decide? I'm not saying Russia, because the Russian people, I'm sure there's plenty that are all for it. There's a lot more that aren't for it, but scared to admit that they're for it. They're not for it. And then there's a very minority that actually will take to the streets. And probably those 1,700 people last night or whatever it was probably got sent to a fucking gulag or something there, because it is not a democratic nation. But I sat there and I said, why? Why on earth would this man risk the damnation of the entire planet, first and foremost, as well as sanctions that are going to fuck him and his people? But I don't know if they'll really fuck him, because I'm sure he's taking care of himself and his homies. And that's always the way that shit works. So I looked some stuff up. And I mean, it's really amazing. Some of the stuff. Now, I only put a fraction of the stuff, wrote down only a fraction of what's actually out there. Excuse me real quick while I take a drink of my coffee. Do you all notice the insanely cool horned mug? My girl got it for me for Christmas. That's why I can pretend I'm a Viking as I drink my coffee. No, there's no mead or fine beer getting drank out of this. Just La Llave in the morning, right? Just fine Cuban coffee. That's all that goes through there. So, let's get to this. The Ukraine, now I'm just going to go through a couple of these before I get into one of the main reasons I really believe. But here's the reasons why I guarantee are definitely on the list for old Vladimir. Ukraine is the number one for proven, and this is the fucking world now, proven recoverable resources of uranium ore. Second in Europe, second in Europe, 10th in the world for titanium. Second in the world for manganese ore. Second largest iron ore reserves on the planet. Second in Europe, mercury ore. I mean, this list went on and on and on. But here's one that really stuck to me. The Ukraine is fourth in the world. Now, this is 187 countries, big planet. Number 4 in the world for total value of all of their natural resources. That says it right there in a lot of ways, Number 4 on the planet for all of the natural resources. Now, I know that Russia has a lot of natural resources as well, of course. But if you're somebody like Vladimir, you don't look at the Russian resources as you look at Ukraine's resources as your resources as well. Plain and simple, because he's coming from a different mindset. And this is really what I want to get into right now. We're going to try to get into the head of Vladimir Putin. That's not going to be easy. I mean, I'm not crazy. At least that's what I like to tell myself. But it's not easy to get into the head of a man like this, but it's actually not too super hard at the same time, okay? Here's some things about the Ukraine and why Putin probably feels validated in doing what he's doing. The birthplace of Mother Russia essentially started in Ukraine, in Kyiv, to be real with you. The Vikings, now that's a lot of people saying, "Ooh, well, let's just put it easy." I'm sure a lot of you out there watched the show Vikings, right? Great show. If you haven't seen it, you damn well should. But when Ivar ends up going on trying to ditch out, he ends up getting picked up by the Rus and taken to Kyiv. But these were the Viking Rus. They spoke Old Norse, etc., like that, because they were descendants of Scandinavians, etc., that they followed the rivers, and they went there, plain and simple. And they founded what became Russia. They founded the culture that became Russia, And so therefore, Russia has insane ties. The beginnings of their very nation, in a lot of ways, starts out right there in the Ukraine. All right? And then we have this. Everybody knows about the Soviet Empire, Well, Ukraine was a very essential part of the old Soviet Union. You have to realize the Ukraine has more arable land than pretty much any place on the planet. I used to live in the Midwest, and corn, beans, wheat, barley, grains. If I remember, they're like number one or two barley producers in the world in Ukraine. But either way, Russia eats off of what Ukraine grows. That entire region eats off of what Ukraine grows. It is the Midwest, if you will, the breadbasket of the region. Okay, some very important shit. Especially when you have 43 million people in Ukraine. I can't remember if it was just under 100 million or some shit like that in Russia. And then you have all your subsidiaries, etc., your little vassal countries and territories that you have to feed. So, I mean, that makes an insane difference right there. Food. We all need food. Okay. Here's something that is really, really important. Now, Putin wants a basically a buffer point, if you will. Let's be real. Nobody likes Russia for the most part. Everybody thinks of Russia as the old school days, and they're like, fuck Russia. Thus, they have all those former nations that were under the Soviet Union, for the most part, have all joined NATO. And NATO, if you don't know, it's the world essentially kind of like the world's army, if you will. Now, are they effective? I really don't know. I'm not going to really get into the good parts of NATO or the bad parts of NATO, because I'm going to be real. I know a little bit about NATO, but probably not enough to truly get in depth with it. And I like it and I'm against it at the same time, if that makes sense. I believe there's a need for it, but I also believe there is no need for it at the same time. I don't know. I go up in the air on NATO. I always have. There's very few things I ever agreed with Trump, but one of them was our insane funding of NATO and not really getting our fair share out of it. But either way, he has the Ukraine, in a sense, is a buffer zone around all of that blue, if you will, that is NATO, bordered right up against Russia, that they see as a threat, or at least the government of Russia sees as a threat. Thus, he said that they're not allowed to join. He said they're not allowed, the democratically elected officials of Ukraine and the people who vote are not allowed, according to Putin, to go and join NATO. That's some ballsy shit right there alone. But so he's worried about all of those people being on his border and be able to attack him at any time. And I think a lot of it comes down to old Stalinist fear. You know what I mean? I really do. But here is, and of course, there is the reality that Putin is former KGB. He came up under that old regime, the old Soviet regime, and I think in a lot of ways he probably wants that back. But I'm going to say the main reason, 100%, why I believe that Putin has invaded Ukraine. Now, we could say all of those actual reasons, if you will, like, the NATO and resources and all of that. That all makes 100% perfect sense in the mind of somebody who's thinking properly, if you will. But I don't think Putin's really thinking like that. I truly don't. And this is why sanctions don't matter to the man. Literally, he does not give two fucks about sanctions. They're like, you're not going to be able to do any banking. Your entire country won't be able to do any banking. You won't be able to get food. You won't be able to get this. You won't be able to sell any of your goods. He's like, I don't care. It already right there alone tells you that, dude ain't right. But here's what it is. Putin, he's an old man. Plain and simple. If you see him now, shit, he's even got a lot fatter than he used to be. But I think that he knows that his rule, if you will, is kind of coming to an end. He knows it's getting to that point. He's getting old. And after a while, when we get old, in a way, I don't even know if he wants to do this shit anymore. But there's a reality that he's been in power now for decades. Literally decades. Like 22 years, I think it was. Maybe longer. And reality is he hasn't really done shit. He took Crimea. Now, Crimea is kind of I get the idea of Crimea. It's a good strategic point, if you will, but it wasn't worth all the blood and all the sweat and tears basically that he had to use to get it. It just wasn't worth it. But I mean, actually, I think they're spending more money on Crimea now than they were ever even dreaming of having to do it. But the fact is, he hasn't done much, and I feel that he's looking for some sort of legacy. Okay, he wants a legacy left behind. Like, I am Vladimir Putin. I did this. He wants to be in the history books like Stalin was. Like, I took this land, I took that, I did all of this, I built this. He wants people to see his legacy of being one of power and one of seeing the Soviets or the Russians, Russia, as power, the Russian bear. That's why he goes out and you see him like, that's all he ever, if you really think about it, all he ever does is try to portray himself as something of power. You'll see him standing without his shirt on and a gun with his foot on top of a bear he just killed, or swimming in an ice cold river, or dude never has a shirt on, or doing his karate and judo. You'll see him with on a fucking tank where he's not wearing a shirt. And I mean, he's always trying to portray like masculinity and power. And the thing is, though, I understand this, but I don't think that he understands the times. I think in his head, everything it's kind of like when we get old. A good example is like, you could tell me, oh yeah, like 10 years ago, and sometimes in my head I'll go back to the 1990s. And I'm sure it's with him. You say 10 years ago, and he's going back to the Soviet Union. And so his head, his time space is there. And he's not really up to par with what the regular people of the day want, or even what they believe in anymore. And I think that's what's going to bite him in the ass. I really do. Because he wants to show all this power, and he wants to take shit. And I mean, I'll be real. I think he's going to do it. But my big problem with all of this is one thing and one thing only. Now, do I understand the politics of Eurasia? No. Do I really want to? Well, I like to understand a little bit. I used to think of a lot of like isolationist thoughts, and like, yeah, you guys do you, we'll do us. But in the world we live in today, all this shit seems to affect us. And I think that with Ukraine, I 100% believe that Putin's just kind of dipping his toes in the water, if you will. And he's feeling it out. He's like, let's see what I can get away with. And if you don't believe this, think of it like this. Those of you who love your history like me. Think of Adolf Hitler, all right? The two aren't too far off. But think of Hitler. Now think of it like this. When he said, I'm taking the Sudetenland. For those of you who don't know, the Sudetenland was an area of Poland, etc., that was largely in Poland, and was largely German-speaking German people. Now, he used this with the Donbass and stuff like that in that little region, but that was his Sudetenland, if you will. And Hitler said, I'm taking the Sudetenland. And he did it. And everybody was like, oh, shit, don't fuck with Hitler, man. Let's just leave it alone. So they all left it alone. And then he was like, all right, well, these motherfuckers ain't going to do shit. So then he took Poland. And then he kept going. He started taking everything. I think this is the exact same thing. 100%, I do believe that this is going to be the exact same thing. He's going to test out the waters in Ukraine. And then they're going to put a false flag up. I don't know on which side. I'm going to be real. I would like to say his side, but who knows? Maybe the side that our people are going to be on. Because it's already been proven that pretty much every American war we've ever gone into was based upon a false flag, From weapons of mass destruction to the Gulf of Tonkin to literally knowing that we were getting ready to get bombed for fucking Pearl Harbor. I mean, we can keep going and going and going with all of these false flags, and I do believe that something like that's coming up. I hope not, but I do believe it. And it's going to be on one of those sides. It'll either be him saying that NATO troops fired on Russian troops, so he has to fight, or it'll be Russian troops fired on NATO troops, which is going to suck us all in, regardless of who shoots first or doesn't shoot first or is perceived as shooting first or who said shot first. In the end, it won't matter. In the end, what it's going to do is it's going to be like a World War One situation where everybody has all these stupid pacts with each other, and we're going to get drug into World War Three. Now, I do believe that's where it's coming. And if you don't believe that the Chinese aren't sitting there like with their little fingers like this, you're fucking stupid. Because right now they're watching what everybody does, and they're getting ready to take. They're going to take Taiwan because they kind of have to. They ran out of money. Everybody thinks the Chinese got all the money in the world, but they don't. They're running out of money. They're running out of food. They're running out of resources. So they got to start taking other people's shit. It's going to happen. Plain and simple. It'll start with Taiwan because that's their Sudetenland, if you will. You know, that's where it'll all start with them. You know, then you're going to have North Korea, which is basically a fucking fat little idiot boy over there. He's going to try to get uppity and think he can fuck around. Because all of those people, all of the people that are essentially the tyrants of the world, the dictators, there isn't very many of them. So they got to stick together, you know. It's kind of like the Bad Boys Club. They got to stick together because they don't have any other friends. The other ones are just watching. They're waiting. They're like, oh, shit, let's see what they do to Vlad. If they don't do shit to him, maybe they won't do shit to me. Or maybe they'll be too preoccupied with what's going on over on the left side. So I'm going to do what I want on the right. The shit's coming. Let's hope that it doesn't. You all know me. I like to say I hope for the best, but I expect the worst. And this could very well be one of those situations where the worst comes in. You know, plain and simple. I hope that it doesn't. The last thing I want to do is have to deal with saying shit like that because I do feel that we got lucky in World War II. Nothing came to our soil. I mean, they caught a couple Germans in Florida once, and maybe one in New York or whatever that tried to sneak in from a sub, but they didn't do anything. A couple balloons got floated over and blew up in Washington, I think, and some in Canada, actually. But there was no fighting on American soil. This could be one of those things that changes all that, you know? I really do feel that way, so I hope it doesn't. All right, well, I don't know if I shed any actual light on what's going on over there for you. I hope I did. I do recommend that you try to do some research yourself and don't just watch the news. Remember, Fox News is going to tell you a whole bunch of bullshit. And CNN's going to tell you a bunch of bullshit, but the truth is going to be right in the middle. And actually, at the moment, I'm always anti-Fox for the most part and anti-Newsmax and all that shit because they're actually more pro-Russia at the moment, which I do not fucking understand. I do not understand the concept of our former president, if you actually want to call him that, actually praising everything going on from Putin and comparing it $2 worth of sanctions, and he's getting a great deal, and comparing the invasion of the place as some sort of fucking real estate deal. I think we should tar and feather that man personally. I really do. And if you guys support him and you're against what I said on that, you know what? Hey, we can debate it, but tar and feather. I think we should bring that back anyway. A long time ago, tar and feather people. But to the point, right? I kind of rambled on that one, but hey, I think that right now this is kind of like going to be one of those things that comes up that you're either with us or against us, and right now I believe we need to be with the people that are being oppressed. You know, we're America, the supposed anyway, at one point strongest country in the world. I do believe we're still the strongest militarily. And it's our duty to try to help the oppressed. It really is. We can't claim to be the strongest nation and the greatest beacon of democracy if we're not willing to protect democracy. Plain and simple. Now, do I want to? Hell no. Are we kind of obligated? Yes. I don't want any of our troops on the ground. The last thing I want is Americans and Russians to be fighting. But if they do, and it comes here, you better believe Wolverines is going to be coming up. Travis, I'll be calling you, brother. All right. So, as they say in old Canada, peace out. Or as they really should be saying, because of the great show Letterkenny, one of the greatest things to ever come out of Canada. Remember, the two greatest things ever to come out of England Whereas the Sex Pistols in the United States, possibly not in that order. The greatest things that ever come out of Canada, I don't really know about that one. I would have to say No Means No and possibly Skinny Puppy. But other than that, I really don't know the greatest things come out of Canada. But as Letterkenny is the greatest thing to come out of Canada besides No Means No and Skinny Puppy. So, peace out, pitter patter, get at her. All right, as I say in Old Miami Beach, hasta luego, dale, dale, ciao. And as I say that, I take a sip from my wee mug of, espresso, Cuban coffee. Calayan cafe esto. And as we say in old Las Vegas, Nevada, my beautiful adopted hometown, my sweet, sweet city of sin, not so innocent, not so sweet. You know, I want everybody out there to have an absolutely wonderful, wonderful weekend. Remember that I want it to be better than you believe you even deserve. As always, I'm going to leave you with this. If you try something and you fail, give yourself a high five and a congratulations, because so few people will ever try it all. And never forget, each step forward is just that, a step forward. All right, everybody, I'm out. Let's hope we don't break into World War III by Monday. I'll see you all then. Deuces.